Hello, ghosties. I'm Chance Lee,
And I'm Amanda McAvoy.
and this is That's So Gothic, a movie podcast about girls, guys, and haunted houses. Today, we are talking about a remake of a Gothic classic, and I'll try not to make too many cannibalism jokes about Rebecca.
The terrace is for guests only.
Monsieur, the young lady will be joining me.
What did you do?
I'm a lady's companion.
Maxim de Winter. His wife died last year and is in dire need of company.
I'm Monsieur de Winter.
What are you doing?
Oh, you'll see.
This week. I'd like to never forget it.
Come to Manderley. I'm asking you to marry me, you little fool. Mrs. de Winter, may I present Mrs. Danvers?
Welcome to Manderley.
Never seen a house like this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you'd been a lady's maid.
This is all very new to me.
Oh, I'm sure you won't disappoint him, madam, if that's your concern. We did a lot of entertaining when the late Mrs. de Winter was alive.
You can talk to me about her. I have no secrets from you.
All marriages have their secrets.
Has Max ever talked to you about the accident?
I don't know what you're talking about. How am I supposed to know anything if you don't tell me?
She's still here. Can you feel her?
Been tossing and turning all night. Rebecca. Bad dream.
She was the love of his life. I wonder what she's thinking about you. Taking her husband, using her name. He doesn't love you.
I said I want the truth.
You didn't know her. You know what he did.
He can't go on living in that big old house with her ghost.
I don't believe in ghosts.
Released in 2020, Rebecca was directed by Ben Wheatley with a screenplay by Jane Goldman, Joe Shrapnel, which cannot be that person's real name,
No.
and Anna Waterhouse. It stars Lily James as the unnamed second Mrs. De Winter, Armie Hammer as Maxim De Winter, Kristen Scott Thomas as Mrs. Danvers, and Anne Dowd as Mrs. Van Hopper. And this is the classic story of a second wife's anxiety.
Yeah, pretty much.
So this was released on Netflix, so we have no box office statistics, but it does have a 38% critical tomato and audience tomato.
Wow, exactly the same?
Exactly the same.
Wow.
So if nothing else, Rebecca brings critics and us commoners together.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, sometimes you see those previews for movies and it's like critics and audiences are saying, and they could absolutely apply to this.
Critics and audiences are
great.
critics and audiences are saying not as good as the Hitchcock version.
Exactly.
Yes. So Sheila O'Malley reviewed it for RogerEbert.com. We've talked about her before. She reviewed Crimson Peak and The Visit. So she's like the Gothic reporter on RogerEbert.com. She gave it 1.5 stars.
Yikes.
She said that the emotions in Gothic romance are fever pitched, but this new Rebecca is just too damn sane.
Oh, I like that because I get it. Yeah.
It is very subdued.
Yes, it is. It is.
Especially coming from Frankenstein a couple of weeks ago.
That's very true. Well, and even or compared to, we'll talk about it more later, but comparing it to My Cousin Rachel, I mean, it's much more tame.
Yes. So the director, Ben Wheatley, is someone I'm sort of familiar. I've seen one of his movies. He also directed, most recently directed The Meg 2.
Oh, hell yeah. Can't wait.
So maybe that's gothic, girl, The Meg.
Ooh,
So
maybe.
see what happens to The Meg.
Yeah.
But he directed this movie called Kill List, which film bros love.
Really? I've never heard of it.
It's, frankly, I found it excruciatingly terrible.
Really?
I really hated it. It's about a guy who's an assassin and he's murdering people, hence the kill list.
Right.
But there's like cult imagery throughout the movie.
Oh,
and so
okay.
in the end, there's this kind of third act reveal that there's been a cult controlling things the whole time.
Interesting.
And then there's a surprise that happens. And to illustrate the protagonist's shock, the movie just pauses.
Okay.
And it's such a dumb choice that I thought my Netflix was buffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I had to rewind it and do it again. And I was like, no, that's the choice he made.
That's so bizarre. And
It's
sounds
such a weird
exactly
student film choice.
yeah, it sounds like something film bros would ladle up.
People in film school love when movies look like they just came fresh out of film school, and I don't understand it. I would like something a little more sophisticated,
right? Yeah.
But I don't understand that. So for me, having that, and then a lot of his movies, the posters have people with guns on them. So seeing him do Rebecca was surprising to me. But he says he's a big fan of Daphne du Maurier because in film school, he realized all of his favorite movies were based on du Maurier books, or stories. So Rebecca, The Birds, some other one. But he says this is clearly an adaptation of the book, and he tried not to, interface with the Hitchcock film at all.
Okay, because the Hitchcock film, I've never seen it, but it's very different, right? Does it take place in?
I slept through a lot of it.
Oh, okay. I always got the impression that because do you know when this movie takes place? It's kind of it's like the 20s or something.
I think so. Yeah. Because the book was published in 1938.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like it's the late 20s, early 30s.
Okay.
And I think the film is probably around that time, if not contemporary for I don't know, 1940 or whenever it was made.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. But I guess retrospectively, it's really not that far of a difference in years. It feels longer than it is.
I think I know people love the original movie. It was a Best Picture winner. People love Alfred Hitchcock. But just being old, I just find it so dull.
Yeah.
It's in black and white.
Ugh. Boo.
Armie Hammer wears this gorgeous mustard suit in this movie that
really does,
you never would have gotten to see in black and white.
That is true. There is some good fashion in this movie.
Yes, I really liked the fashion in this.
Yeah.
But as we said, this is based on the novel by classic Gothic queen and possible plagiarist Daphne du Maurier.
Oh.
Did you know this?
No.
She was accused of Rebecca being a plagiarized version of a 1934 Brazilian novel called The Successor by Carolina Nabuco.
Ooh.
Yep. And she denied the accusations and nothing really came of that.
Interesting. Do you know what the Brazilian novel is roughly about? I mean, I'm sure if there's
the same thing.
Yeah.
My understanding is that they're virtually identical.
Really? Yes. Okay.
My friend in Brazil said that his mom read them both and said they were basically the same story.
That's so funny. Oh, interesting.
She was also accused of plagiarizing The Birds.
Really?
So it was a thing for her.
So I was going to say, Rebecca, I could maybe see, I could see it's not a crazy outlandish, maybe for the time it was, but it's not crazy outlandish. I will say, if you're getting accused of plagiarizing The Birds, that's a fever dream.
Yes.
That
Yes.
one I feel like I could be like,
Yeah.
did you come up with that? The bird flu hadn't even happened yet.
Oh, very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll never know. She denied it at the
Mm-hmm.
time, but she's long dead. So unless her ghost comes back to deny it again, we will get no denial from her.
Yeah.
So this movie stars Lily James, who I know nothing about.
Nope.
And frequently I confuse her with Lily Collins.
Yes, because Lily Collins is she Emily in Paris?
She's Emily in Paris.
Yes, I get them mixed up.
So I had to do some research, and I learned from one very long Daily Mail article all of the similarities and differences between Lily James and Lily Collins.
Interesting.
And I now realize they are like light and shadow. Like without one, we could not be able to perceive the other one.
Really?
So they were born 17 days apart.
Stop it.
No.
Oh my God.
And both of their dads were musicians. Lily Collins, of course, Bill Collins.
Yeah.
And then Lily James, unknown musician, but they're both very wealthy.
Okay.
So I have a quiz for you.
Okay.
Lily James or Lily Collins? I'm going to ask you a series of questions that are loosely Gothic related about both of them.
Okay.
Right. And you have to tell me Lily James or Lily Collins. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Which one worked with director of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Kenneth Branagh?
Ooh. James?
Lily James on Cinderella.
I was going to say, it's funny. I knew Lily James was the Cinderella. I did not know that was Kenneth Branagh.
Me
that
either.
Is hilarious. Which is
now I want to see it.
I have watched it before, and we should maybe do it for this because it's really funny. There are so many crotch shots of the prince. Like it's funny. So
I can't wait. Okay, we're adding that to the list.
Yep, absolutely.
That's a lifelong Kenneth Branagh stan now.
And Lily James.
And Lily James.
Yeah.
I really liked her in this movie, just as an aside.
Yes.
So which one, Lily James or Lily Collins, was described in this very long Daily Mail article as having a, quote, Gothic look?
Oh, that could be either. I think James looks a little bit more Gothic, though. Lily James.
Nope, they described Collins as Gothic. Yeah, maybe it's the dark hair.
Yeah, interesting. Does Lily James not normally have dark hair as well? I know that she's blonde in this.
She's usually blonde in like some of the photos I saw.
That's
and
so
like
funny.
Some fashion campaigns.
I just thought she had darker hair. Anyways.
We're learning so much. So as we said, Lily James stars in this book based on a novel by classic Gothic queen and noted maybe plagiarist Daphne du Maurier. But which one starred in Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, a book based on a novel by modern Gothic queen and noted plagiarist Cassandra Clare?
Oh, God. I couldn't. I'll just say Collins? Lily Collins?
Collins. Ding.
Woo! Yay!
Yes. Which one played Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies?
Oh. Collins?
Ding, ding, ding. Yes.
Oh, cool. Great.
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Which one had a relationship with man old enough to be her father, Dominic West?
Oh. Lily James?
Lily James. Ding, ding, ding.
I didn't know that, but I could see them being a cute couple.
Even though he was married at the time.
Oh, wonderful.
Which one had a relationship with man old enough to be her father, Ben Chaplin?
Was it Lily Collins?
No, it was also Lily James.
Oh my God. Wow, she has a type.
Yeah, I briefly mentioned. It's so funny. I briefly mentioned him on the Others podcast because he was in the movie Birthday Girl with Nicole Kidman, and
so funny.
Popped up. Who knew? Ben Chaplin is now that's a Gothic mainstay. And last but not least, can you remember which one stars in this movie?
Oh my goodness, why did you ask me this? Is it James?
Yes.
Okay.
Good job. You got almost all of them.
Oh, that was hard. I was sweating.
Yeah, that was I mean, boy. Yeah. And if you're, if you're interested in learning more, they go down the
Yeah.
various rabbit holes of all their similarities and
I
differences.
might have to.
Very,
Yeah.
very long Daily Mail article.
Yeah.
So in addition to, I almost said them, like they're both in this movie. They could swap one out for the other one
Yeah,
in one
they,
or
like,
two
tag
scenes, and I
team
don't
it.
think I'd
Yeah.
noticed. Yeah. But we have Kristen Scott Thomas as Mrs. Danvers. I adore Kristen Scott Thomas.
Mm.
I love The English Patient as much as Elaine
Oh.
Bennis hates The English Patient. I love it so much. Yeah. And so Kristen Scott Thomas is just like an eternal queen to me because of that movie. And she's in a couple other good movies. What did you think about her as Mrs. Danvers?
I mean, I think she was very stoic, very, how would I describe her? Just very serious, very, like, unsettling, I wish they had delved into her relationship with Rebecca a little bit more. But yeah, I thought she did a great job.
Yeah, one of the things that the original Hitchcock movie, and I guess the novel, again, I'm a terrible librarian. I don't read. I just watch the movies.
Yeah.
Is that the like kind of hinted at sapphic love affair between Mrs. Danvers and Rebecca?
Yeah.
Which I didn't think comes through at all in this movie.
I was definitely getting more of a like mother-daughter thing, actually, if anything.
Yeah.
So interesting. I did not pick up on that.
I kept waiting for them to almost lean more into it since now it's 2020, but they just omitted that altogether. So I don't know if that's more accurate to the novel. I have no idea. But last but not least, we have Armie Hammer.
Arm and Hander,
heir to the baking soda empire.
Yep.
Did you know that I think it's grandfather Armand Hammer bought like controlling shares in Arm and Hammer because he was just rich enough to do it and it sounded like his name?
That's so funny. Honestly, I love it. I love it so much. I wish more rich people did that shit now. Like,
right?
They would be a lot less insufferable if they did that shit.
Right? If Armie Hammer was just like investing in baking soda instead of graphic cannibalist fantasies,
he'd be much more sufferable.
He'd be just better off.
Right. Although I like him more now that he's like selling timeshares or something. I respect that.
Timeshares in the Cayman Islands. Yeah. Because his career is over. Yeah. I had kind of forgotten like the cannibalism stuff.
Yes.
Really overtook the narrative. And I had forgotten there were some like sexual assault allegations in there.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was going to go into this thinking like, yuck, 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 cannibal jokes, but I think we're just going to skip it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think, because I kind of had a similar reaction because I don't have my finger on the pulse, so I hadn't been reading any of the stories or keeping up with it. So when I did think it was just him kind of having weird fantasies, I was like, don't yuck his yum. But
I thought the same thing. Like, I understand these are dark, weird fantasies, but I saw the Cannibal Cop documentary, and do you know that? Do you remember Cannibal Cop?
No.
So Cannibal Cop is like if Armie Hammer wasn't rich and famous. So he was a New York City cop
Yeah.
who was on a website where he would share his graphic cannibalism fantasies and about like eating his wife.
Yeah.
Very similar to the fantasies Army Hammer would share. And his wife found these messages, and as you would in her situation, got freaked out, thought they were true. And, you know, who's to say they're not? And then it became this whole thing. He got fired. I think he got arrested.
Ooh.
And then the whole thing became like, arrested for what? And can you arrest someone for expressing a fantasy when there's been no, and when does fantasy cross into the realm of premeditation?
Yeah, like intent.
And it's a really good documentary. I think it's on HBO Max.
Okay.
And so thinking about that regarding Army Hammer and just the cannibalism, it's like, well, the thing, one of the most alarming things, and I shouldn't even, I don't know how alarming it is. No one's fantasized to eat me that I'm aware of, so I don't know how I'd feel about it in that situation. But there's, you know, this is a website. It's not like this is an isolated incident. There's like thousands of members of this dark website that Cannibal Cop was on. So it's, I don't think it's as uncommon as we think it is.
Yes.
But then mixed in with everything else regarding Army Hammer.
Right. He's kind of a piece of shit.
But there's plenty of pieces of shit who still have careers, though.
That's true.
That's,
I mean, our first episode was Jane Eyre, and that was what's his face, Michael Fassbender, and he's kind of a piece of shit. Yeah. And you know, so it's, you know, we try to balance it here on the podcast, but
we'll acknowledge it. Acknowledge it. Just so about Army Hammer, separate from that, I find him devoid of charisma.
Oh my God. He just like saps the energy anytime he's on screen. I'm like, great, it's this guy again. Like,
I don't understand it. I saw Call Me by Your Name, and all of my problems with that movie were Army Hammer. I was like, I'm supposed to think this is like a love story, but with Army Hammer being as uncharismatic as he is, I just see him as a manipulative sociopath. And I don't see it as a love story because I see him manipulating poor Timmy. He's manipulating Timmy.
Right. I don't.
And next thing you know, Timmy's a cannibal in the in that other movie.
True. Oh my God, it's spreading. I think the only thing I knew Army Hammer from was The Social Network, and I remember that was the first thing I'd ever seen him in. And after I watched it, I was talking to, I think, my brother about it, and he was like, oh yeah, the twins played by the same guy. And I didn't even realize it, not because I thought it was such a good performance, but because I just wasn't paying attention when they were on screen. Like, I was like that isn't a cool, interesting fact to me. It's, he was on screen and I was like, oh, okay, this is the boring. Where's Andrew Garfield? Like, that's, you know, he's
when there's two of him, it's each one has half the charisma, which is
exactly.
And dividing, you can't divide zero. Can you not divide by zero? I don't know, mathematical impossibility. Either way you go.
Yeah.
And you're especially beside Andrew Garfield, who just drips charisma.
Exactly. Yeah. He's, you know, I don't really know what his deal was. I think he was just you know, good looking Hollywood man, rich, Nepo baby.
Yeah.
Well, I guess technically he's not a Nepo baby because I don't think his family was in the entertainment industry, but he was
right. He was just rich.
Yeah, rich
and privileged.
Exactly.
So I think especially the direction this movie takes near the end, it doesn't work for me, again, because of the casting of Army Hammer.
Yeah.
But let's get into the plot summary for this movie. It begins with the often quoted line, "Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again." Yeah. And we see water and hair in the water.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we're in Monte Carlo in the summer. I'll just take a moment to say the sets, the locations, the costumes, the lighting, all the production values of this movie are off the charts.
Yes.
And even though the story isn't one I care for, I couldn't stop watching because it's just so pretty to watch. I did enjoy watching this movie.
It's a very beautiful movie. I had some issues with some of the sounds they chose.
Okay.
Like the one that stuck out to me the most is there's this part where she takes a hairbrush and is pulling hair out of it, and I, I can't even describe it. They like put in this sound effect that sounds more like squelching than pulling hair out. There's just a couple of, I don't know, like I'm not usually someone who's that nitpicky, but there, like that in particular really stuck out to me. And then once I heard that, I just like things just weren't sounding right to me at certain points. I don't know if it was like a, you know, a weird choice post production. Like I don't think it was intentional. Just some very odd choices.
Oh, that's interesting. That kind of makes me
Yeah.
want to go back and watch it again. I remember her
Yeah.
pulling the hair out of the brush, but
Yeah.
not necessarily the sound it makes. I do remember it being very loud.
Yes, it was like it was definitely an added sound effect. Maybe squelching isn't the right word, but it's so obviously a sound effect that I thought it was supposed to be like this intentional artistic thing, but they never like did it again or like did anything with that I was like, what the hell is going on? So anyways, but it's a very beautiful looking movie, and yeah, the costumes are great.
Just watch it on mute.
Yeah, seriously. Just
Watch it on mute.
captions, you're good.
So we learn our main character is a lady's companion.
Mhm.
She doesn't have a name. The captions would just call her Mademoiselle for the first like third of the movie. She's companion to the bitchy Mrs. Van Hopper, played by Ann Dowd. Ann Dowd from Hereditary.
Oh, that's where I recognized her from. That's funny.
I used to think her and Margot Martindale were the same person for a while.
Oh, they do look very similar. Yeah.
So she's this rich, like social parasite.
Yeah.
She's obsessed with status and money, and she really wants to sit next to this rich widower, Maxim de Winter. And we see him in his mustard suit, which he does wear a lot for someone who has a lot of money. You'd think he'd have more than one suit.
Yeah.
But maybe he packs light on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they meet, and then she gets sick. Mrs. Van Hopper gets sick. And so Mademoiselle and Max get to spend some time together and start this little romance. And they chat. We learn she's an orphan and not rich, clearly. Like she orders this plate of oysters for breakfast because she just wants to try them. And he invites her for a drive in his tan Bentley, this gorgeous car.
So beautiful.
And for their date, she wears these navy blue billowy pants that are so pretty. I loved her pants. And they visit this exotic garden, like a botanical garden. And we learn she's very naive. She says, everything I know is from books. I haven't really experienced anything yet.
Yeah.
And there's lots of cacti at this botanic garden, which is really pretty. It's like you get the desert and the ocean because they're on the cliffs looking over the ocean, but there's cactuses. It's great. And she will frequently like step in it, like put her foot in her mouth inadvertently while bringing up his dead wife.
Yeah, she does it a lot.
She does it a lot, and he always just like makes her feel like garbage about it, even though like she has no way of knowing. Like he always has the worst responses to it and makes her feel terrible. So we learn about his house, this Manderley mentioned at the beginning, and he says that it's been in his family for centuries, but if he were to die without an heir, it would go to his sister.
Which feels very like Edwardian.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And my note here is also Edwardian, but Edward Cullen-y. He has this like controlling Edward Cullen nature.
He really does.
Like Stephanie Meyer must have been really inspired by Maxim de Winter.
Yes.
he does adhere. We'll talk about it in our Gothic roundup, but of this just like asshole man Gothic trope.
Yeah, he's a dickhead.
He's a dick. So, but at least the clothes are cute.
Yeah.
He wears the mustard pants, and she carries this mesh tennis bag that I really liked. And so he leaves her little notes each day with like what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
And one of them just says beach.
His job is beach.
Which it proves that Armie Hammer is a Ken.
Yeah, he is. He is a Ken.
Armie Hammer's a total Ken.
Yeah.
Cannibal Ken. Like one of the discontinued Kens.
Yeah.
I just love that. Beach. Like
beach.
So so they have a lovely time together.
Yeah.
But then unfortunately, Mrs. Van Hopper, she doesn't die. She gets better.
Ugh.
And they're going to go back to New York. She seems to be doing it just to spite her, honestly. Like she decides they're going to leave early.
Yeah, she's very into like, you kind of mentioned it, like into class. And, she sees the Mademoiselle as being very below Armie Hammer, says, well, we'll get into it. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, she says to her, in New York, there's plenty of boys and excitement all in your own class.
Rude.
And she also says to her, do you honestly think he's in love with you? It was a distraction.
Yeah.
And on one hand, it's kind of like, oh,
yeah.
Like,
yeah.
She might be right. I mean, this movie, it will end up spinning it as if he is really in love with her, I think. Maybe. I don't even know what to think.
Yeah.
We'll get to it. But she tells Max this. And so he proposes to her. And she gets to tell Mrs. Van Hopper that she's not going to go with her to New York. And Ann Dowd is in her best like Paddington Bear outfit. She's got like the red hat and like the blue coat. And she tells her that when you trap a man between your legs, they don't stick around for long.
Yes. Love it.
And he's only marrying you because he doesn't want to go on living in that big house with her ghost. And she says, I don't believe in ghosts.
Yeah. Which is a very weird response to that.
Yes.
Yeah. Not just like fuck off. Like to be like.
Well, it made me think that there was going to be a ghost in this movie, and there is no ghost.
There's no ghost. Yeah.
No ghost.
Yeah.
So now, like, the captions change, and she's now called Mrs. De Winter. And we get to Manderley, and all the servants are waiting outside for her, for them. So Max carries her in, and we meet Mrs. Danvers, the severe, like, head of housekeeping or so. I don't know. Well, she was the lady's maid, I guess, to the old Mrs. Danvers, the old Mrs. De Winter.
Right. But now she's like, I mean, it's kind of weird, I guess, that she's even still there. I guess I didn't understand that, but maybe Max was trying to be nice. I don't know. But like he has enough money that he could have just sent her somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah, it is an odd choice.
Yeah.
But this house is massive.
It's huge.
And again, really good set design. But we learn the new Mrs. De Winter's place pretty quickly. They put her in this guest bedroom in a far off wing where she can't even see the ocean. And they give her this, no offense to the actress, she was cast for this, but the really funny looking maid.
I know. She's so sweet, but it's like, and we don't know how much they played into it or whatever, but it's almost like a caricature of a, maid, like a dowdy maid.
She looks like a woman from a Wallace and Gromit cartoon.
Oh my gosh. It's true.
But she grew to be one of my favorite characters. I really liked her by the end of the movie.
Yeah. She's amazing. She does a great job.
She's really, well, as you said, she ends up being really sweet and one of the few sources of warmth in this godforsaken home. So we get a lot of tension, and the help is always frosty to her,
Yeah.
which I want to be like, just fire them. Like, again, if they're
Right?
like, you're rich now, I would just be on such a power trip.
Yeah.
Look at me, one wrong look and you're out of here.
Seriously. Yeah.
I just don't understand it. But he's also sleepwalking, and
Yeah.
there's all this mystery happening. Lots of hair brushing, as you said.
Yes.
She's always brushing her hair like Marsha Brady, like 500 times before bed.
Yep.
And we do get her pulling the dead wife's hair from the hairbrush.
Yeah. Which, again, she didn't have a hairbrush before that she brought with her.
Yeah, this reminded me of the lodge when they show up and she puts on the woman's hat.
Yes.
And seems surprised when it's their dead mother's hat. Like, who else's hat would it be?
It's very true, yeah.
Also, I'd fire one of the maids. You didn't clean this brush before you gave it to me?
Nasty.
Or buy a new one?
Seriously.
Anyway.
Yeah.
She puts on this gorgeous charcoal pantsuit and they go for a walk along this rocky beach. And she ends up at this boathouse, like this little cabin, because one of the dogs runs off and is creepily just growling into a dark corner.
Yeah, just like its snout is like on a wall, basically. Just like
Very Blair Witch, but with a dog.
Yeah.
I liked that scene. It was one of the few creepy scenes in a movie that kind of isn't creepy.
Yeah, really one of the only scenes that had like serious tension.
And turns out there's actually a man behind the curtain. He's kind of mentally handicapped, perhaps. And he talks about digging for shells and suggests that Rebecca went into the sea.
Yes. You know.
And of course, Max is mad at her for going into the house. And she finally tells him, how am I supposed to know anything if you don't tell me?
Right. Seriously. This poor girl.
God, his communication is really poor. But his sister soon shows up, Beatrice. She's nice. I liked the sister too.
Yeah.
She likes the new Mrs. De Winter, and they show her wedding photos and everything. And she had previously gone into Rebecca's room, Mrs. De Winter had, and gone through her desk, which had some fancy underwear catalogs and like a porcelain figurine that she broke on accident.
Yeah.
And information about an annual masquerade ball that she would throw. So she says to Beatrice, Max's sister, she's thinking of reviving the masquerade ball. Of course, that pisses Max off as well.
How dare
Everything
she?
pisses him off.
Yep.
And then poor Mrs. De Winter, the grandma, has this Alzheimer's freak out. She's not Maxim's wife.
Yeah.
What have you done with Rebecca?
Yeah. Poor old lady.
Like, oh, Granny's lost it again. Let's get her back in the car.
Yeah.
So we learn a little bit more about Rebecca, and we're told she was one of those bloody annoying people, irresistible to everyone, men, women, children, animals.
Yeah.
I think that was the sister talking.
Yeah.
So she ends up going back to the boathouse and she's trying to find out more information about Rebecca. She finds some pictures down there. But then this guy, Frank, I forgot to mention him. He's like the property manager.
Yeah. Yeah. Landscaper or something.
Yeah, he shows up because Max has told him to lock the place up.
Right.
And they talk a bit about Rebecca's death. So it turns out she was on a boat that sank and her body washed up 2 months later.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. So she goes back into Rebecca's room to snoop around, and Mrs. Danvers shows up and gives her soliloquy about Rebecca and how she was perfect. She could wear anything. She says, I'd brush her hair for 20 minutes at a time. And there was like a Oh no, he would brush her hair. Max would brush her hair.
Right, that's right.
And she would say, harder, Max, harder. There's like an S&M quality to it.
Yeah, very kinky. Her
And she does
the
say,
hair.
I yes. I did like this line. She says to her, does he brush your hair?
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
So she says that she can feel her in the room and she wonders what she's thinking about, taking her husband and using her name, and says that she'll always be the love of Max's life and he'll never be happy. So she has a dream of being devoured by vines, and she wakes up under the cute little ivy bedspread that he's sleeping under. I really liked that. That's like some cheat that I would get.
Right. Yeah.
And we see her, she's like reading in this green velvet chair. Lots of great, you just feel the fabrics in this movie.
Yes. Yeah. Whole house is just so like, it's huge, but it's like, there's so many little cozy spots I would just curl up in.
It's another thing where like, yeah, in any other movie, the house would be creepy.
Yeah.
But like you said, yeah, it's quite cozy in places.
Kind of cozy. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'll live with some crazy man if I get to stay in these houses.
Seriously.
I'd end up being like Florence Pugh though, and having an affair with some, hunky groundskeeper, but
whatever. All in a day's work.
It's true. So we meet Jack Favell, who's Rebecca's cousin, and he takes the new Mrs. De Winter on a horseback ride full of entendres.
Yes. He's very I don't think he's Italian, but he comes off as Italian to me. He's like very like, ooh.
Yes, he's like the guy in My Cousin Rachel, if he wasn't gay.
Yes.
The one that the one that's more Greek than Roman, or more Roman than Greek, or I forget the saying. Yes. This guy's the opposite. He's more Roman, he's a horn dog for women, but
yes, he is. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was presumably invited by Mrs. Danvers, and just to try to, she's trying to drive Rebecca a little crazy.
Yeah.
And we see her playing with that bird in the cage toy that so impressed Christina Ricci in Sleepy Hollow.
I was going to say, yeah. It's incredible.
Oh my gosh. So she was like, how did it get out?
Yeah.
What? Ay. So thankfully we don't get anything like that in this movie. But she ends up deciding that she's going, Mrs. De Winter decides she's going to fire Mrs. Danvers. Yeah. But they end up having this very sincere chat, and the Mrs. changes her mind, and Max even apologizes for being a shithead. Yeah. And Mrs. Danvers decides to help get this Manderley ball revived.
Right.
And Clarice, the maid, the new lady's maid, she suggests that she dresses as the woman in the red dress, which is this large portrait of Max's great aunt or great grandmother, who is the first lady doctor in England. And there's a few scenes where we see all these like hundreds of swirling bats overhead.
Yeah.
And I just realized that nothing really comes of that either. It's just kind of something that happens sporadically.
Yeah, I think to be spooky, gothic.
I guess so. In a movie that seems to be trying to avoid the gothic at every turn, it's a weird choice.
Yeah.
But the night of the ball, we get a really fun scene where she shares her wine with Clarice, and they have a cute little time together, and they get her all set with this costume. They pin the brown wig onto her head, and of course, like you as the audience, we know where this is going. Everyone is horrified because she looks exactly like Rebecca.
Yeah.
Max is pissed off as always.
Yeah.
He says, I should never have brought you here.
Yeah.
So
and she looks so cute.
No,
she gets to the landing of the stairs, and she kind of does like a little pose. She's like so excited,
and everyone's just like, like if they had records, they go, yeah. But Yeah, so the sister does try to kind of comfort her and saying, you know, how would you have known all these things? We get another, didn't mention it earlier, but sometimes they'll play this bad folk song where they're like, a woman is a branchy tree and, you know, the man is trying to climb her, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
I used to listen to NHPR, New Hampshire Public Radio, a lot. And I fucking hated when the folk show would come on.
It was like this song over and over, basically.
This song on repeat.
Yeah.
And it's like, doesn't fit in with this to me.
Yeah, and again, that's why, like, I think there's some jarring choices in this movie. It's hard to get a sense. It sucks because, you know, I was going to say it's hard to get a sense of place. The house, but they do it so well with the house and the setting, but everything else with it is very weird choices.
Especially since the song isn't diegetic, like it's not in the scene.
Yeah,
it's just a sound. It's just like a needle drop of a folk song,
right? It's
that is so on the nose with its lyrics.
Yeah, it's like if you put a Radiohead song on top of like a Princess Diana biopic. Like, well, I guess actually she was alive in the 90s. It could happen.
Good work, yeah.
Good work, actually. Maybe Radiohead should make a Princess Diana musical.
But it's like, I don't know if they put the Elton John like Princess Diana remix in the Princess Diana movie.
You're right. Oh my god. Honestly though, that could work. I would be fine with that.
Work too.
But it's like on par with it.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No.
So she has another anxiety dream that night, Mrs. De Winter, about Rebecca. There's a good shot in this where it looks like the fireworks are her head exploding.
Yeah. The fireworks that whole scene is pretty cool.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. And in the middle of the night, Mrs. Danvers tells her she's unworthy, tells her Max will never love her, tells her no one wants you here. She appears to be trying to convince her to jump off the balcony and kill herself. But they're interrupted. A flare comes up offshore and everybody rushes down there because they've pulled Rebecca's body out of the water. But how have they done that? You know, I thought she was dead this whole time. So we get the big confession scene where he admits that he killed her because of this parade of men that she brought through. Even her pseudo-Italian cousin. They loved sleeping with their cousins back then.
Oh yeah, big fans.
And he is this sad sack wreck. He tries to get the new missus to shoot him. Like, what a fucking loser.
Yeah, he's just and like she's, you know, trying. She's every woman in this situation. Like, no, it's okay. Like it's all right. Clearly uncomfortable.
Oh my god, it's awful. And it's like, dude, like he can't even kill himself. Like you're just gonna put this on her.
Seriously, I know. This poor little fragile woman.
I know.
She's so cute and adorable.
And he could have told her this. How long has she been in this house? Months?
Yeah, right.
He could have told her this like in Monte Carlo.
Right. Exactly.
Just like whispered to her on the beach. You know how everybody thinks I miss my dead wife? I'm glad she's dead. Yeah.
And this is why too, it is hard to know whether or not he like really loves her. Like the fact that all of this is happening, he's still being a dickhead to her anyways. Like he's just, you know, again, I don't know if it's accurate to the character in the book and the other movie, but maybe it's just the way I perceive him because he's Armie Hammer. But like, he's just such a self-centered prick.
Yeah, being Armie Hammer does him no favors.
Yeah.
So she says, all this time I thought you still loved Rebecca. But
so not.
She agrees to help him try to cover this up. During all of this, I missed who the other dead woman actually was.
Yeah, I don't know that they really explained.
I think she was just conveniently dead.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I will say, I thought it was kind of I was on Rebecca and not Rebecca, Mrs. De Winter and Max's side on this when they were really, poking at him like, hey, how did you think this was your dead wife? Like, it was a body in the water
Right.
conveniently when she died. Even if I
Right.
didn't kill them, I would be like, oh, that would make sense. Is it a dark-haired woman? Yeah, that's
2 months
probably my wife.
later. Yeah,
Yeah,
2 months later.
right. That's probably my wife. Like, anyways, but yeah, so I don't know if they explain where I don't think it was anything nefarious, like he killed someone
Right.
else to cover it up, which would just be stupid.
Right. I think he just seized on that opportunity to be like, oh, someone else is dead. Like, yep, that's her.
Yeah. There she is.
Or maybe he did think it was her. Who knows?
I was gonna say too, like there is the very real possibility too that even though he, there's nothing to say that he didn't think that this bloated, waterlogged woman was his dead wife.
Right.
Yeah.
So they end up going to court over all of this. The movie turns into this courtroom drama, which in the Hitchcock version felt like an eternity. I slept through almost all of it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is not what I thought I was getting out of this movie. So I was glad I at least knew that going into this, that it was going to turn into a court thing. And this one was a little more dramatic, I thought, because we get the cousin coming back at some point to try to blackmail them. But then Mrs. Danvers takes the stand and spins it into them bribing him. And we learn that they all thought Rebecca was pregnant and it's the cousin's baby. So he flips out.
He's very upset.
I get really confused with like first cousin, second cousin, so on. If you have a baby with your cousin, like, because I think so my cousin's child, I think is my second. No, is that my second cousin?
That's your second cousin, I believe.
So if I had a baby with my cousin, would they be both my son and my second cousin?
I believe so. Well, and it's like, because then at that point they would share great grandparents. Yeah. Yucky.
Yeah. These knotted incestuous family trees are really confusing.
Yeah. And like, I will say the man who plays the cousin does a pretty good performance when he's upset about it. He's, you monster, all of this. I don't know. I think I would have, if I got my cousin pregnant, dodged a bullet.
Yeah. I know. Deny that, dude.
Right?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a mess. We do get a good scene from Mrs. Danvers, though, where she says about Rebecca, she lived her life how she pleased. No wonder a man had to kill her.
Which at that point, I was like, I'm kind of team Rebecca.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe, we're only hearing it from Max. I think I am team Rebecca when it comes down to it.
If I was Armie Hammer's spouse, I'd be doing the same thing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So she ends up getting fired, Mrs. Danvers does, and the cousin takes her away, the male cousin.
Yep.
We get this, like, I don't know if the studio, if Netflix was like, we got to jazz this up a bit, but we get this very unnecessarily, like, dramatic car ride.
Yes. I know the scene where she's driving and she's just trying to like pass a car on a dirt road. They frame it like it's Fast and Furious.
Oh yeah,
and it's like that's how my mother drives to work. Like it's not that it's not that serious.
That was so funny. I was just like, why is this happening? So she's desperate to get to the doctor's office in London because we're to assume that Rebecca saw a doctor in London who told her she was pregnant. Right. And the new Mrs. De Winter wants to get rid of the files. And I love how she just goes in there. She tells the doorman, I left my purse.
Gotta get my purse. Yep.
And he says, all right, head on in. I love when people just lie their way into confidential facilities and movies. And I wish I had that gumption.
exactly. And honestly, I wouldn't even use it to be nefarious. I just want to know other people's business.
That's a good point.
I would
And
love to just flip through a therapist's office, little manila folders.
and honestly, maybe I'm just naive, but I do feel like it is this easy. I just don't do it because I'm afraid of getting caught. But like, I don't think we would get caught.
Honestly, I mean, I think that they're like, so, you know what? I think it's a little bit of hubris on their parts. I think why would anyone want to look at these?
Right.
Because we're nosy Nancy's and we
Yes.
want to.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I'll try it. I'll let you know how it goes.
Try it and report back.
Yeah, I really
Hopefully
hope my
not
therapist
from
doesn't.
jail.
Yeah, I hope my therapist doesn't drop me. I really like her.
Go to a different therapist. Don't go to your therapist.
Okay,
Go to do it.
okay.
Don't
That's
shit where you
true.
eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to a different therapist. Oh. So she finds the file, and we learn Rebecca didn't have a baby. She had a tumor.
Yep. A little baby tumor.
Little baby tumor. It might have had teeth and hair. A lot of tumors do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like could have been her unborn twin, just like in My Big Fat Greek Wedding / Malignant. Both.
Two of the greatest movies of all time.
Both have the same plot, really. So she ends up, they find this out, and the Mrs. is able to convince everybody that Rebecca drowned herself as a result of her cancer. So they get back. Army Hammer Max is free, but they're pulling up and the house is just ablaze.
Yeah.
Really good fire. And the Mrs. finds Mrs. Danvers perched on a rock down by the coast. And she says, he killed the only person I loved, and I can't let you have Manderley. It was ours. And then she jumps into the water.
Nice.
And we see that the body that from the beginning with all the hair was actually her.
Yeah.
And the Mrs. wakes up from another nightmare, and she resumes the morning, the monologue from the beginning of the movie. She says, last night I dreamed I went to Manderley. This morning I woke up and let the dead behind.
Yeah.
And she's in Cairo. She had told Max she always wanted to travel, and she was kind of pissed that she had to spend all this time in Manderley. So she's like thrilled that it burned down.
Yeah,
like she got a happy ending out of this. Army Hammer does look good, shirtless and like sweaty.
I will say that final scene, I would be very happy in that room. Even with Army Hammer.
Oh, yeah. It's great. Yeah. She really makes out in the end. Yeah. I, again, don't remember. I feel like the original story is supposed to be like a bummer or like, a tragedy. But this one really does turn it into like a romance. She gets a happy ending and good for her. We don't usually see that.
Yeah. And it's also like very much implied that they're like very much in love and the only thing they need is each other, which again, I don't really understand, but okay.
Yeah.
Go off.
And then the movie does do this weird, like, they close with her looking like directly into the camera. And I wasn't sure why. I feel like that's something a villain would do at the end or something. Right. And I got no sense of manipulation on her part.
Well, because the thing is, too, so they did technically like lie about Rebecca killing herself. But when Armie Hammer talks about it, Rebecca like goats him into killing her.
That's right.
So like in my impression was that she was technically almost trying to kill herself, but she was kind of trying to make her husband do it to take him down. You know what I mean? Like, so like you mentioned with, the new Mrs., I didn't get any villainy from her because I think she thought that too. Like,
yes.
She's just, she just wants her man and her money and her passport.
Right. And who wouldn't? I love that for her.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand the final shot, but I was glad she got everything she wanted.
Yeah. She had a great time.
Well, anything else you want to add to our plot summary?
I don't think so.
Excellent. So we will take a short break and we will return with our Gothic recap and we'll decide is it Gothic? All right, ghosties, we're back with our Gothic roundup. All Gothic films have 4 elements: a girl, a guy, a house, and a haunt. I think we explicitly have our like textbook
Yes.
girl, guy, and house here.
Yes.
She says verbatim, I'm so naive.
Yeah.
Everything I learned is from books.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's the unnamed Mrs. De Winter.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't even get a name.
She doesn't even get a name, which I like that though. I think at
Mhm.
least that was obviously I'm assuming that's coming from the book. That's a fun style choice.
Yes, I do like that too as a thematic choice, as
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah.
And then he's a little different because I don't feel like he's like intentionally manipulating her. He's just a terrible communicator.
Yeah, he's a terrible communicator. Again, from this movie, it's a little bit hard to read what his intentions are.
Mhm.
But I think at the best, he's just a bad communicator. At the worst, he is manipulative and just doesn't want to be alone, and is potentially
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's potentially a cold-blooded killer. But I think again, that's on the worst end of the spectrum. I think he lies somewhere in between.
He does want a baby because he wants to have an heir for his estate. But now maybe they don't even have to worry about that. Manderley's ashes.
That's so funny. That's something I completely forgot about, and because they don't really bring it up again, as far as I remember in the movie. But that's very true. There's almost a freedom to Manderley burning down.
Yep.
Yeah.
She is set free.
Yeah.
I love it for her.
Yeah.
And even though Manderley burns, it was gorgeous.
It's a great house.
This movie was filmed at 6 different estates.
Wow.
And it's kind of like a composite of them. But I feel like most of the exteriors seem to be from this place called Mapperton House, which is in England somewhere.
Yeah.
But this house stands on land that has been owned since the 11th century by only 4 families.
Wow.
Over almost 1,000 years.
That's bananas.
Lots of them had babies with their cousins.
Yeah, they had to keep it in the family, literally.
To keep it in the family.
Yeah.
So that just feels like the most Gothic, like real world house we might actually have.
Seriously, I'm so fascinated.
I think you can visit like the grounds maybe.
Good.
Of Mapperton House. It is listed as a tourist attraction and they've got a website.
That does
but I don't know how much you can see.
Yeah, it does sound like a fake British name. Like if someone asked me what was the name of, like if I was in middle school, oh, it's beautiful. Wow. Yeah, like if I was in like middle school and I was like doing that thing that 12-year-olds do where you just lie for no reason. I'm like, yeah, actually my family's from England and we own a house there. And then someone's like, oh yeah, what's it called? And then I look at, over at the wall, then there's like a big, it's like, geography class. There's a map. So I'm like, Mapperton. It's the Mapperton estate.
Oh my gosh.
That's the vibe of that house.
I love it. Well, we have to go.
Yes.
You can enjoy a delicious lunch, cream tea, and ice cream in the Coach House Cafe.
Oh, that sounds so cute. I want to be fancy and go.
It actually seems relatively affordable.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
We should see if the Lilies will go with us.
Oh my God, how fun would that be?
Have a tea party with the Lilies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It seems to be, I don't know who these people are. There's just a random picture. Luke and Julie, the Viscount and Viscountess Hinchingbrook.
Oh, okay.
They must be the current owners. She's very pretty. He looks like his dad is like his mom's cousin.
Ooh. Oh, I love her outfit too. Yeah, she's gorgeous. Yeah. She knew what she was doing. I'm assuming she married into the family.
She's got maybe, yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
she could be his cousin, but
She could be.
but
Yeah.
she's not the child of so she's escaped that so far.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sure it's lovely. They're never going to allow us there. Once we go, we're going to be like, oh shit, did they hear us talking about how they're fucking their cousins? But they're going to say, there they are.
Yeah.
Stop run and leap over a hedgerow and escape. Teapots clattering.
We jump into the water like the headmistress there.
Yes. Also, like, no one knew how to swim and she just drowned.
I know, that's the thing, is I kind of expected her to just pop up at the end.
Yeah.
It's not, doesn't look like she lands on a rock. It actually looks like a very nice, lovely drop. I would dive in. Yeah, she just dies.
Those wool clothes get weighty, I guess.
That's true. That is true.
But the one thing this is missing is the ghost. I do feel like there was some ghostly elements in the original story, but this movie seems to, there's no ghost. There's like the, her quote goes, like the memories of her linger, but the movie does not even for a second want you to think there's a ghost.
No, yeah. Very not supernatural. I'm listening right now to an audiobook that's like a sort of retelling of Jane Eyre. It's called The Wife in the Attic, or The Wife Upstairs, I think. But anyways, the reason I bring it up is because I was listening to it a couple of days ago after I watched Rebecca, and I was almost disappointed in myself that while I was watching Rebecca, I didn't think of the theory that perhaps Rebecca was still alive and was just like putzing around the house or something. I mean, obviously that would have been a cool direction, but it would have been very Jane Eyre. But I also bring it up because Jane Eyre didn't have, a supernatural element, but it definitely had that. I think it had a little bit more of that foreboding. I mean, she was literally there, but that like presence of the wife there.
That's true. This one does have a bonus gothic, which is maybe again more in the original one than this one, but that kind of like sapphic romance with the help.
Yes.
We had that in the in Spencer with her and Sally Hawkins, sort of, or Sally Hawkins, wasn't quite reciprocal, but it's a gothic theme, I think, and more in the the original story than in this one, but like it's
very
fractional bonus.
Yeah, Lizzie Borden, very Lizzie Borden.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But with all that in mind, what do you think? Is this gothic?
I mean, yeah, I'd have to give it, in my opinion. I mean, did I enjoy it nearly as much as Jane Eyre? No, but I see like a lot of similarities. I think it's gothic. What about you?
I do too.
Yeah.
I do wish I had done some more research into the original one, but I was thinking back to what Guillermo del Toro said about Crimson Peak being a romance, which I do not agree with still. But this is a romance, I think. That is
true.
And I do enjoy. No one will ever know how much I enjoyed Phantom Thread because the internet ate our episode on it. But like that one takes the gothic horror elements and makes them into a romance, which I really like. So I do appreciate that this movie just kind of leaned into the romance of it. I just don't want to have a romance with Armie Hammer.
Exactly. He's just not charismatic. He just is hard to watch. And it's hard because I feel like it sounds like we're shitting on him because of everything that's happened, but he's just not good.
I have a Letterboxd review from before the Armie Hammer scandal on the movie Nocturnal Animals.
Oh, I didn't know he was in that.
He's in that.
Yeah.
And my review says something like, Jake Gyllenhaal treats Amy Adams like shit after their divorce, but she's remarried to Armie Hammer, so isn't that punishment enough?
Yes.
And that was like 4 years before any of the Armie Hammer stuff came out.
Yeah. Oh, that's so perfect.
So we're not trendy haters of
No.
Armie Hammer. We've always hated Armie Hammer.
Always been anti-Armie Hammer.
I support his right to have cannibalistic fantasies.
Right. Go off.
As long as they're consensual, Armie.
Yes. Right. As long as they're consensual, as long as you're not a dickhead about everything else.
Mm-hmm. I just don't want to see him in movies.
Exactly. I would be fine with seeing him sell me a timeshare. He's probably doing a great job doing it. Well, actually, that's not true because he's not charismatic.
He's not charismatic.
He's probably blowing it.
Maybe though, since he's not, because I think he's doing it because he's been cut off from that sweet baking soda money. So maybe we'll cut you a deal. You know, he needs the money.
That's true. That is true. Maybe I should take advantage.
Take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you would like to add to our discussion on Rebecca?
No, I think I'm good.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Amanda. And thank you, Ghosties, for listening to us break down Rebecca. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, rate and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or drop us an email at sogothicpod@gmail.com, and follow us on Instagram for hints about what we'll discuss next. Stay ghosty. Boo-bye.
Bye.